As a matter of fact, there has been lots of confusion about quote unquote when we say methodology. My teacher Andre Bete, his caste, class, and power. That he goes to a village and lives in the colony of Brahmins, twice born, and then he tries to look at the caste relations from the canon of dominant castes of the Nambudris. So how objective Andre Bete might have been, and this is, but then as a researcher, typical question that what is the hypothesis? And suppose I don't have a hypothesis in my research, then it is not a good attempt to carry on my research. Since 76.
76, September 76, I joined. Okay. Then I have also. Last thing, the insignia that we have. Different comparatively new find there, 1970, 107 years old. But generally we have much older. परसों जब उनसे बात हुई, then I asked him कि भाई मैं इंट्रोड्यूस क्या करूंगा कि वी आर ओल्ड फ्रेंड्स. मैंने तो 27 पेज का सीवी भेज दिया. बताओ. That's the one. ठीक है ना? This is the token of welcome that we have every time we give. But when I asked him कि बच्चे को आशीर्वाद दो, तो he said okay. मैं कहा फिर आओगे तो कुछ बोलोगे भी? He said okay. मैं कहा क्या करोगे? मैंने कहा कोई भी टॉपिक बोल दो. मैंने कहा रिसर्च मैथड. He said that's my favorite. मैं कहा फिर और क्या चीज?
Am I audible to everyone? Good afternoon,
yes,
everyone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, जी. Stage is yours. आप डायस रखे हैं सामने या?
नहीं मतलब I'll be using the I can sit there and
अरे आपको बोलना है तो on
हाँ
करके
no, I always prefer walking, like
ठीक है ना? ये यहाँ वॉक करते रहो.
I don't like sitting while I'm speaking. I am doing something which I hate, and I hate PPT because I come from old generation. I am a digital immigrant, quote unquote, and you guys are digital natives. And the fundamental difference is that I am unable to handle digital resources, even including PPT, and you guys are well versed with how to use it. So when I say methodology, it's a very tricky thing. Unfortunately, it may be easy for some. But when I look back in retrospect, I find it very difficult, As a matter of fact, there has been lots of confusion about quote unquote when we say methodology. And when you read books, and I refer to standard textbooks, Good and Hat, P.V. Young, and there are many, Curlinger. These were the books which I considered standard textbooks during my time when I was growing undergraduate student. And those books are responsible for generating confusion, which I carried on for a longer time. And so how to define what methodology is? So I don't know how to handle it. Okay, working, great. So there are advantages interacting with the young guys like you. Then I also become digitally smart. Like in spite of being a digital immigrant. Okay. In any research in anthropology, economics, sociology, name any branch of discipline, there are three fundamental questions: what, how, and why. What is tribe? Why tribe and how tribe, the whole process of modernization. So in any research, anything, and science or social science, doesn't matter. You can think of physics, mathematics, chemistry, biology, so on and so forth. Or you can think of anthropology, sociology, political science, any history. In any discipline, if you intend to do research, pure or applied in nature, there are three fundamental questions: what, how, and why. And to answer these questions which a researcher poses is entailing quote unquote research methodology. And that is why it is extremely important to clarify what we understand by research methodology. And if you go through the typical standard textbooks, including Good and Hat, P.V. Young, Kurlinger, and so on and so forth, unfortunately, that does not help you in truly clarifying what research methodology is. As a result, you carry lots of confusion. So the first thing first is, let us try that when I talk of research methodology, or from my understanding of research methodology, is that how to define it. Okay. So one interesting good definition is by Partha Mukherjee, Indian sociologist who was in JNU for some time, then went to Kolkata, and then came back to Delhi, but not in JNU, but in ISI, Indian Statistical Institute. So he defines methodology as, I prefer to call it, methodology can be defined as A plus B plus C. A, techniques of data collection. B, analytical tools. And C, that is philosophy. Mind it, confusion in understanding methodology is owing to the fact that we understand by research methodology sometimes just A. A is techniques of data collection. B is analytical tools. And C is philosophy. The main reason for confusion in understanding research methodology is that we confine our understanding to either A or B or C, whereas research methodology is not only combination of A plus B plus C, but to be precise, it's a complex combination. It is not a simple combination. Research methodology is a complex combination of A plus B plus C. And when we say that, then it is a deeper understanding of what is A, that is techniques of data collection. It could be ethnography, it could be observation, it could be interview, it could be questionnaire, it could be schedule, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. But that is just one component. That is not the research methodology. Or statistical tools. Some of you are very good in statistical measures like measures of central tendency, measures of variability, regression, chi-square, and so on and so forth and such. So that is analytical tool. And most important, or at least equally important, is philosophy. You can say that I am an anthropologist and philosophy is the last thing I want to deal with. That will not do. To say that I give damn care to philosophy itself is a philosophy. You cannot escape. No way you can escape. No, going to the Indian tradition of anthropology, M.N. Srinivas and his disciples. They simple. As a researcher goes to a field, a village, tribe, observes for one cyclical year, and then faithfully records all those things and comes back and writes it. Where is philosophy? Apparently, one would say that in ethnography there is no philosophy. But there is philosophy in that also. So, my understanding of research methodology is a complex combination of A plus B plus C, that is A for techniques of data collection, technology for data collection. When you think of technology, then technology, you simply think of your mobile, your laptop, your, only engineering students, they think of technology. Technology means from a tree, I cut it and make wood, and from wood, I make a table and chair. So technique of doing something for some purpose, some goal. So that is technology. So in that sense, so don't get confused with technology. Technology is the word which is used by Partha Mukherjee. Okay. So technology means technique of doing something, technique of data generation, technique of understanding the reality. What is reality? Technique of understanding the problems of tribes in a particular state, in particular area. So, complex combination of A plus B plus C. Fine. Same definition is also by another social scientist, Norman Blackie. Some, changes in some semantics or words, but more or less similar thing he talks about. I hope I'm audible to online participants. Am I audible to everyone and comprehensible? Online. Please respond.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, good. Because sometimes it's so difficult. I feel very uncomfortable interacting with the online students because you never know how you are active or how you are not interactive. So that is why I make it a point to interact in some way. And best way is that sometimes I ask to summarize both online and offline participants as such. So if you could summarize it in one sentence, what is the definition of research methodology as I have just explained? Online, please, first, and then offline. Can you summarize it in one sentence? Yeah, any volunteer.
A
A complex combinational sum of A plus B plus C, where A is techniques of data collection, B is analytical tools, and C is philosophy.
Philosophy.
Good, good. So, yeah, from offline, because now we are moving from offline to online. I don't know either for good or better or worse. Any doubts about what I have said so far? Any confusion? No. Okay. So Norman Black is also talking about the same thing as such. Just for the sake of convenience, I mentioned it.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, could you please explain the philosophy? I think philosophy by word itself is so too broad, so I could not understand in sense of research methodology.
Yeah.
Could you
Very
please?
good question. Good question indeed. And to be honest, philosophy is something that is not my domain too. In other words, when we talk of philosophy, what does it mean? So, if I want someone to read it, and preferably, I want more interaction with the online, not that offline are less important, but then just see, I can see the faces, it's convenient for me. Please, okay, there are two paragraphs. So online will be read by, ontology will be read by online and epistemology will be read by offline. Yeah, 50-50. Online, yeah, please, quick, read it. It's the basic assumption is that everybody can read without being sarcastic.
The ontology is a system of belief that reflects an interpretation of an individual about what constitutes a fact. Ontology is associated with we consider as reality, what is the nature of reality, what can be accepted as knowledge.
So when we talk of philosophy, at least let us think of two components. One, A, ontology, and B, epistemology. And we enter into the domain of philosophy with ontology and epistemology as such. So epistemology, offline, yeah, I can see. Any volunteer, and quick, without wasting even a second. Anyone?
The theory of knowledge is specific with regard to its method, validity, and scope, and the distinction between justified belief and opinion.
Okay. So there are two components when you talk of philosophy. That is three component, and that is A, ontology, and B, epistemology. Now, ontology means what reality is. Everyone knows what caste is. But then when M.N. Srinivas talks about caste, he has one way to understand what caste is. Another anthropologist, Louis Dumont, the author of Homo hierarchicus, his understanding of caste is very different than what M.N. Srinivas talks about. So the point is, caste as a reality is one thing, but caste as a reality understood by M.N. Srinivas is so different than caste understood by Louis Dumont, another anthropologist, the author of Homo hierarchicus. So the point is, there are concepts like caste, and there may be many more, class, power. As administrator, you will be dealing with all these things in time to come when you will be in the administration. Caste, class, power, these are concepts which are academic in nature, but in reality, you will have to deal with it. It will come on the way. As an administrator in pursuit of good governance or governance as such. And then you recall that caste defined by M.N. Srinivas. And then instantly you will come to realize that, oh, the way Louis Dumont talks about caste is very different than the way M.N. Srinivas talks about caste. Then you should recall one point, that if you wear glasses and if the color of my glass is green, then everything I look at will be greenish. But suppose the color of my glasses is red, then everything will look reddish. It is not that M.N. Srinivas differs with, Louis Dumont or XYZ. The point is that what kind of glasses you have put on. Research methodology is something like that, because there is, let us think of only binary opposition. One is positivism as one way to look at the reality, and hermeneutic tradition as another way of looking at the reality. Like, to make the things, reality is more complex, but for the sake of convenience, let us take two anthropologists or sociologists, and these two names are Emile Durkheim at the one hand and Max Weber on the other hand, for the sake of understanding. So, Emile Durkheim, representative of positivism as a philosophical tradition, and Max Weber as, representative of interpretative or Western tradition. Okay. So I don't know whether I have addressed the question of philosophy, that when we talk of philosophy, then we enter into ontology and epistemology, because as a researcher, you want to understand the reality. As a district magistrate, you have to understand what caste is. Caste X has beaten up caste B, and there is a conflict between A and B, A coming from a particular caste and B coming from another caste, so on and so forth. And then you want to understand that, okay, why there is so much of conflict between A and B, just because they happen to be of caste A of one type and caste B of another type, whatever. And you are curious. So you cannot be a good administrator without having adequate knowledge of what the reality is. And you have to understand the truth. You have to understand the reality and reality of caste and caste conflict. So that is why you have to go into ontology and epistemology. Now, when it comes to ontology, then maybe one should read ontology online, this left side, and offline, right side. Don't think in terms of left and right, but then left online and right offline. Please, without taking more than 1 second. Yeah. Online, please read the right one, right side. Or no response?
Ontology is concerned with
Yeah, please.
ontology is concerned with what is true or real and the nature of
Reality. And then bottom one?
ask question like what is existence and what is the nature of existence.
So this is philosophical, basically, like, then yeah, offline, right side, epistemology, please read it.
Epistemology is concerned with the nature of knowledge and different methods of gaining knowledge. Ask questions like what do you know and how you know.
Okay. So in short, like if you want to go deep, then there's no end to it. And like I've been told that, please don't go too deep into the things, because, primarily I'm an academician, and there's a fundamental difference between administrators, your side, and academicians, this side, So you want to be very quick answer, like you are
Hello,
looking
sir.
for Google Guruji. Yeah. Question, yeah.
Sir, one question, sir. Sir, the ontological dimension of research methodology is based on perception. So, can't we say that it can be influenced by cultural ethnocentrism or uh, perceptions can
Very
vary?
good
So,
question.
can't you say that this brings in this kind of sacrifice the integrity of whole process, like the Western anthropologists, they view reality of our social system differently, and the truth is somewhat different. So,
Very good question. Very good observation. So I want to take one case study in terms of a story. Okay? To respond to your observation. Okay? Okay, you are born as a very conservative Indian family. In Indian family, you have been socialized. All right? Now you see one teenager boy kissing another teenager girl. So your ethics, how you respond, good or bad?
Good.
No, like you are coming from a very conservative, try to understand my question. You come from a traditional conservative Indian family. That's what your upbringing has been. And you have imbibed traditional Indian cultural system. So, would you say good or would you say bad?
Bad.
Bad. Logical answer is bad. Now you say, tell me one thing. To say Sat Sri Akal, to say Pranam, to wish someone, is it a bad in your culture, in any culture?
No, sir.
That boy was kissing the girl saying Sat Sri Akal. Good morning, Namaskar. But the point is, in the culture you are born, and the way you interpret, you assign some meaning to that action, which is getting colored by your culture. But in some culture, if they want to say good morning, Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, then instead of saying, they kiss each other. Is it a bad thing? So the point is, social action by seeing, if there is a possibility that your culture will get into the picture in interpreting that action. Now, suppose you are a student of physics. The apple is falling from the tree. Who observed? Newton. And then an explanation, Newtonian laws. So the point is, if the apple is falling from tree into the on earth, in Delhi, will it be different in Paris or London or New York?
No, sir.
Everywhere. Everywhere. It will be the same thing. So think these two cases. One, that observation universal, everywhere you have the same. And our physicist brothers would do like that. Let us call it positivism. Hermeneutic tradition is that what we see and how you interpret, because social action we interpret, which is getting colored by our value system, where we are born and brought up, and the value system we have inherited. So merely by observing, we are not going to do justice with the action itself, because what is the meaning assigned by the actor may differ what is the meaning assigned by the interpreter. And if I don't come from that same culture, I may misunderstand. There may be a gap between what is truth and what is false, what is not truth. As an administrator, it is my task and responsibility to understand the truth, to do justice with truth. So the truth is not that simple as apparently one may think. It is highly complex, and that is why you need knowledge. Knowledge for which people used to come to Nalanda 5,000 years before, covering long distance coming from China and elsewhere. So the point is that ontology, epistemology are, I'm sorry, like I'm going too deep into it, but then, this is what I feel, that research methodology cannot be understood in a simple words. And I understand that when you write, you have to write it in 250 words or 200. But then if you understand the concept clearly, then you will, I think that, then writing would be easier, reading will be easier also. So the purpose is, there is no substitute to reading. And there are, I forgot to mention, there are mainly two books for my lecture. One by Partha Mukherjee and another by Norman Blackie. And these two books are more than enough. And then the summary, you will find it in my book, which I have donated to my friend for your library. And you can have an access to that. So the point is, when we say methodology is a complex combination of A plus B plus C, and Somebody asked that what is C, philosophy? Why? As an anthropologist, I don't care for philosophy, but one has to. There is no way we can escape. There is no way we should escape from that, philosophical, dimension of the reality as such. Okay, so it is probably the PPT saying fast, no, and I'm very slow, damn slow. So, there are two, nomothetic and hermeneutic. So, maybe I'm not good in, somewhere there should be something called nomothetic and hermeneutic. Yeah, great, Eureka. Yeah. No. Someone should read nomothetic and someone should read, like many of you must be thinking, who is taking class, the other side or this side? It is basically, if you read, you remember it for a longer time. If I speak only, I don't have to remember. I'm not going to appear in the exam, So, please, someone, maybe I should reverse now, offline nomothetic and online ideographic. Please. Yeah. No, everything being equal, gender
approach argues
gender sensitivity.
Nomothetic approach argues that there are regularities in the social world that can be measured and used to predict behavior. In nomothetic theory, individual subjective consciousness is seen as unimportant since the individual is propelled by external forces.
So the point here is positivism. If the apple is falling from the tree, not only confined to Delhi or London or all over the whole universe, you have the same. So that is, like this philosophy is going very close to positivism. There are many versions of, this nomothetic approach as such. The next one is ideograph. These are the basics, essence. Once you understand, then rest of the things you can easily manage. Like what is ethnography, what is observation, what is interview. Many of these topics are self-explanatory. Once or twice you read it, and I'm dead against mugging up, but then like it's not a rocket science that you need to really need my help to make you understand about it. Simple reading once or twice, enough. But there are some few things, the base, and if you get it, then rest of the things you can, understand. Now, ideographic, please read someone online.
Ideographic approach looks upon reality in terms of individual subjective experience, concentrating on how individual perceive situations.
So here the subjectivity. I talked about two possible case studies or cases as such. Think in terms of hermeneutic tradition as nomothetic, nomothetic as positivism, and ideographic as a hermeneutic tradition. In hermeneutic tradition, in essence, you take into consideration the subjectivity, that is very, very important. Whereas in nomothetic or in positivism, objectivity, that if the apple is falling, there is a science for which you can predict the behavior, and it is universal. Everywhere it will happen the way it is happening. So maybe for engineering science, maybe for physics. How many of you have had physics? Raise your hands. Great. So, by the way, the founding father of sociology, August Comte himself, came from physics background. And physicists will say, anthropology, sociology, why they take subjectivity into consideration? We, the physicists, talk about universalism. Delhi, London, Paris, everywhere the law is the same. What about theory of relativity and quantum mechanics? You forget that even in physics, the like paradigm shift, how theory of relativity is very contrary to quantum mechanics, the way there is a fundamental difference between Max Weber at the one hand and Emile Durkheim on the other hand, or positivist at the one hand and hermeneutics on the other hand as well. Persons like, I'm sorry, with due respect, Einstein was responsible for, then when you drive a car, there is something called a speed breaker. So let us call it knowledge breaker, because he ridiculed. And because of Einstein, there had been delay of 50 years almost in quantum mechanics field. And that is why you had such a delay in quantum mechanics, which is so important today. So the point is, apparently, a physicist will think we, the physicists, are so precise and accurate and universal that there is only one truth, one reality, that if the apple is falling in Delhi, it will also be in New York, Paris, and elsewhere as such. And in social anthropologists, sociologists, 2, 3, they differ with each other, so demeaning, so disdaining. They cannot agree with them. Why there is so much of a school of thoughts, So very put them at the bottom, which is not true. Methodologically, you are unsound, and that is why you would speak like that. So if you are sound methodologically, then you can see that it is basically whether the color to see the reality is like Einstein's spectacles, and then everything you see is macroscopic, relativity is important. Whereas the quantum mechanics physicist, another color of your glasses is giving you a very different perspective to look at the reality. Reality, like how derogatory the word used by Einstein, persons like Einstein, is spooky. Because something which could not be explained within the framework of theory of relativity, he did not like it and suppressed the knowledge in the domain of quantum mechanics as such. So the point is that if you look at this two mutually distinct binary opposed tradition of nomothetic at the one hand and ideographic on the other hand, you find and two representatives, Emile Durkheim at the one hand and Max Weber on the other hand. I'm doing it for the sake of convenience, that you can think in terms of binary opposition between these two thinkers, that how they are diametrically opposed and methodologically very different than each other as such. And that is basically because the color of your glasses, that what is reality, what is ontology, what is epistemology. So philosophical questions cannot be and must not be undermined or ignored in any discourse on methodology as such, from my point of view. Okay, that is the point. So
Sir,
I think
one
my
question.
friend. So yeah, sure.
Sir, how can there be regularities in social world, and how can you predict social behavior as per the neothetic this thing? Can you please explain with an example? If
Yeah, there is a possibility of like what we can do, that we can try to see some regularity in that culture. Say South Asian cultural ethos may be different than the cultural ethos in North America. For example, there may be discrimination in a society. Suppose I am in North American society, then there is a possibility of high and low being white and black. There may be discrimination by white towards black. That possibility is there. And the study of race can empower us to understand that what is going on. Because if I talk to any white man, oh, these blacks, stupids, they are very lazy. Boom. They are not good for work. Who can work hard? Only the whites. That parochial, that perception of whites towards blacks is that. Similarly, there is a possibility of having one perception by twice born towards Dalits or untouchables, and you have many literature available on that. So, for example, if you read Ambedkar and his whole movement, then you may find that there are histories where you have the kind of discrimination in terms of race, and in another societies you may find discrimination on the basis of caste. That possibility is there. It may happen in another society as such. So the point is that if I am a positivist, then I have studied race as the base for discrimination. And if I think that all over the world, the discrimination is only on the basis of race and nothing else as such. But that is not true. If you move from one cultural context to another cultural context, then the reality of discrimination may differ of one society with another society. That probability cannot be ruled out in terms of theory of game. 0.5% this side or 0.5% other side. Is it clear? Does it respond to your query, online participant?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Welcome. So, ontology, and if I will give this series of PPT with. So what you can see that let us not go into this first one, but then epistemology and research. So in epistemology, positivism is one, and anti-positivism, let us call it hermeneutics. So in hermeneutics, we try to understand the subjective experience, and in positivism, objectivity. Okay, like following physics, like that is one way to look at the reality as such. Another important point is that there are many ways to conduct research: inductive, deductive, retroductive, and abductive. It will make it too complicated. So let us confine to inductive and deductive. And for the time being, because it's a complex one, let us consider retroductive closer to deductive and inductive closer to abductive for the sake of convenience as such. Because it's always good to have binary opposition. Okay. So let us think of inductive and deductive as logic of inquiry. That reality may be understood either by pursuing inductive logic of inquiry or by deductive logic of inquiry. So far, methodology we have tried to understand by ethnography, by observation, by going to some tribe and looking at it and trying to understand. I mean, Srinivas, that how he tried to make an attempt to understand the reality as such, which is okay, no problem. But then, once we understand the framework of methodology which I am talking about, then there is a possibility of looking at the same reality differently. It could be, say, positivistic, it could be hermeneutic. Both the approaches may be there, and there are many more. Similarly, inductive and deductive, I skip retroductive and abductive. So let us try to understand that if we want to understand the reality by following inductive, how we will start, how we will pause, go further, and how we finish. And similarly, if we follow deductive logic of inquiry, then how it will be different than what we do it in inductive logic of inquiry, and they are very different from each other as such. And I will try to skip, these. There are many things to. Yeah, this one is. So these are the main points, self-explanatory, that if we follow inductive logic of inquiry or research strategy, then number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. This is how we will proceed. This is what we will do. What we will do? Number 1, facts are observed. We go to a trial, we live there for 1 year or more, and then we observe and come back and we say that, well, this is what is happening and people are doing like this, what we call Sanskritization or whatever. So facts are observed in inductive logic of inquiry. These facts are analyzed, and then on the basis of that analysis, we make a generalization. And that generalization is that low caste Hindus adapt the lifestyles of the high caste Hindus, called quote unquote Sanskritization. So that is a generalization based on that analysis of those observations. And these generalizations are subject to further testing, that test and retest, and nothing is final in science. In science, we keep on, doing it, and if it is valid, it will survive. If it is not valid, it will die out. Truth is something, that truth, even in physics, you see that Newtonian physics, then Einsteinian physics, and today is so you see that how things are changing about the reality, the notion of time in classical physics, and today it has changed. What is notion of time? So the reality is not fixed all the times in the history of mankind. The reality has been the same. Even in physics, in any domain of human knowledge, the reality is being questioned and then it keeps on changing. Ontology and epistemology. It's like ontology means how you want to look at the reality, and then the accumulation of knowledge is such that what is the knowledge so far we have accumulated at this stage. So this is all about inductive logic of inquiry. And then these are the limitations of, like in any logic of inquiry, there will be limitations also. So these are some of the limitations of inductive logic of inquiry. And I have enough time, so probably I have to finish it by 5 o'clock. So I'm used to 3 hours lecture. So for me, it is not a problem. The only thing is that, I have to go somewhere at 5. So I have another 1 hour perhaps. That is perfectly all right with me. So these are the 5 limitations or constraints of inductive logic of inquiry. And these are, number 1, please read it, because when I ask you to read, I assume that these are, but then just for the sake of participation. Yeah. And this is the best way to have, a more participatory approach to the class. Yeah. Any? Yeah, please.
Preconceptions can be set aside.
Preconceptions can be set aside to produce objective observations.
So
Second,
preconception, like how objective we may be in inductive logic of inquiry. Because when you look at the reality, then action is there between one teenager and another teenager coming from 2 different genders, 2 different sexes. But then the way I constructed being born and brought up in a particular cultural setting, I interpreted it in one way. So how objective we will be? The moment we go to a village in tribes, how lazy these people are. That is why they are poor. Immediate thing that, look, I'm in Delhi, I'm working 10 to 5, 12 hours, and therefore I deserve to be an IS. That is stupid who is in that village, he or she does not deserve to be an IS because he is lazy bum. That perception. That perception may be because, I think that living in urban setting, I am superior to someone who is in a remote area, which may not be true. Maybe that fellow did not get an opportunity. That is why he's not like you. So just because you had better opportunity, you are superior to someone who is, so that is the point that, preconceptions can be set aside to produce objective observations. That what we do, that we go, this is my teacher Andre Bete, his caste, class, and power. That he goes to a village and lives in the colony of Brahmins, twice born, and then he tries to look at the caste relations from the canon of dominant castes of the Nambudris. So how objective Andre Bete might have been, and this is somebody posing these questions, So, and not only that, to see the kind of observations he could get, that he is going to some agricultural castes, Andre Bete, for his research, and then he's asking those who are engaged in agricultural activities, and the answer is, oh, you guys are more knowledgeable. So even if you don't cultivate, you know better than I do. I mean, this is rubbish. But then it is how hegemonic knowledge is, like working in those hidden answers also. Like when they answer the queries of researchers like Andre Bete under the supervision of Evan Srinivas, then how objective those observations were. That is being questioned, that is being, problematized. So that is the implication. So then the second point is,
relevant observations can be made without some ideas to guide them.
so whenever we observe, then we somehow get regulated by some theories in our mind. Like normally there are some grounded theorists, argue that we can go and observe and without any theoretical background, without some presuppositions as such. But then, and that is the main point in inductive logic of inquiry. But then that is being questioned, that may be possible and that may not be possible. Both are the possibilities as such. Then the third point,
Inductive logic has the capacity to mechanically produce generalizations.
okay, so like like step 1, step 2, step 3, one by one you go, and then you arrive at some conclusion as such, which would be not really very rigorous. This is one of the criticisms of inductive logic of inquiry. The next one,
Universal generalizations can be based on a finite number of observations.
yeah, like what is your small, what is your sample size? That you go to a village, M.N. Srinivas goes to a village, and on the basis of that, he generalizes about whatever he observed. His students, Andre Bete, Anand Chakravarti, again they conduct village studies in Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan, and then they, on the basis of that village, they generalize about it. But then maybe that if they would have had more observations, their generalizations would have been different than what they have had their generalizations. That possibility is there. So that is why it is subject to criticism. And then the last one is
Establishing regularities is all that is necessary to produce explanations.
so like establishing regularities. Does it really explain the thing? It means that if there is positive relationship, positive correlation, does it mean that X is related with Y or X is the explanation of Y? It may be or it may not be true. What you call it is spurious correlation. The value may be 1 if you come from science background, but at the relationship is spurious, not necessarily X is related to Y or X has produced Y as such. It may be, it may not be. So these are some of the limitations of inductive logic of inquiry. Now, regarding deductive logic of inquiry, am I okay online? Am I comprehensible? Do I make some sense about my topic?
Yes,
Is research methodology, and in research methodology, I have defined how to define research methodology, and mainly I am discussing about C component, and in C component I have discussed few components and why C is important. A and B are fairly easy. A refers to different techniques of data collection, and B refers to different analytical tools. And C is philosophy, and that is something some online one asked that, how come philosophy is important in research methodology as such. And that is what I'm explaining, that, what is reality? What is knowledge? What is epistemology? And can we proceed without posing this fundamental question of ontology and epistemology? Similarly, which logic of inquiry we are pursuing for understanding the reality? What, how, and why question. Everywhere, the basic thing is that as a researcher, what, how, and why. And these questions, to answer, we have different ontologies, epistemologies, logic of inquiry, and depending upon what glasses we are wearing, the reality will look like green or red or blue or so on and so forth as such. And that is what is the point, that reality may be different. Reality may vary from one culture to another. Reality is, in childhood, what you read, that 1 elephant and 7, depending upon where your hand goes, and then you think that this is what is elephant all about. Okay, that is what is the topic which I am talking about. That methodology is that depending upon which kind of methodology as a researcher I am pursuing, truth will be accordingly. Does it mean that truth is not one but many? Possibility is there. That cannot be ruled out. And then the big brothers means physics, mathematics. They will say, oh, this is anthropology, literature, so mundane, so disdaining, so much of differences among themselves, as if that there is so much of consensus in big brothers like physicists that no difference between Einstein and, those who advocated quantum mechanics during even Einstein's time. I'm forgetting what Primrose, and I'm not, I don't remember the names, but many Einstein could not see. So the point is that methodologically one has to be sound to understand the reality. That is the point. That is the bottom line. That if I am following And there are many questions, like this is not the class for research, but then as a researcher, typical question that what is the hypothesis? And suppose I don't have a hypothesis in my research, then it is not a good attempt to carry on my research. I may do research with a hypothesis, I may do research without a hypothesis, depending upon what logic of inquiry I am pursuing. That is the bottom line. So if I'm following inductive logic of inquiry, I don't need to have any hypothesis. If I'm an ethnographer, I don't need any hypothesis. Whereas if I am pursuing deductive logic of inquiry, no way I can proceed without a hypothesis. So in one case, it becomes mandatory. In another case, it is not required. You go ahead without it. So that is why a clarity is required that, okay, what is my position? How I want to look at the reality? Those positions need to be, assumed and clarified. And if you are unclear, if you are hazy, obviously, then we will know. If you are from computer science, GIGO. GIGO means garbage in and garbage out. Similarly, like wrong question, wrong answer. And hazy, cloudy assumptions, hazy, cloudy, ambiguous answers as such. So you have to be very precise in when you are posing a question as an administrator also. Otherwise, you will never realize the truth. Okay. So, like apparently you may think that, oh, these are just academic exercise. Believe me, it is not merely academic. As an administrator, you'll have to encounter these things in time to come.
So, sir, which is a better approach, inductive or deductive?
Okay, you tell me what is better, rice or roti for food?
Sorry, sir, I couldn't hear.
No. I'm having a counter question. Very good question indeed. But then my question to you, counter question, is that you tell me I want to have lunch. Tell me whether rice is better or roti is better. Roti, if I come from, Punjab, Haryana, if I come from Assam, if I'm from Northeast, then not roti, rice is better. So it depends that, so to say that which one is better is, no, that will not be the right way to ask these things.
Then, sir, how do we decide that which approach to fit in particular, research methodology? Like if you're visiting some place, how do you decide which approach to take?
Well, depends that, like how much time you have at your disposal and what is the urgency. Sometimes as an administrator, you will have no time, and that is why you are asked to answer in 250 words. Maybe that you have taken a decision and that goes against the truth. That possibility, and then you regret for what you have done. And I will give you one example. It was almost 10 years back. A friend of mine came to India High Commission as an immigrant officer. So I had taken my brother-in-law to his house in Chanakyapuri. So my friend, that diplomat, asked that, are you married? No, I'm about to marry. So then he asked that, how long you have been dating? Then, no, in our culture, we don't date. And, my seniors, family members, they decided. How come it is possible? And he said, today, someone came for visa in my office, and I rejected because the reality was that they were not dating with each other and they got married. So it could be a marriage of convenience. And that is why I refused giving visa, because they were showing the documents that they were married, but they married without dating me. So the point is that as an administrator, one has to take a decision, but that decision may be wrong, depending upon from which cultural background you have been born and brought up, and you have assimilated those values as such. So the point is, that as an administrator, you take a decision and sometimes your decision may be right, but not necessarily, sometimes it may be wrong. That is the point. Because what is happening that you have been asked to put, the boring in a village, and it should be for the deprived sections of the society. But what has happened that those who are dominant caste, they have manipulated and they have put in their colony as such. So what happens that, many implementation of the programs get manipulated and, influenced by many things other than rational criteria as such. So the point is that, to come back to your question, which logic of inquiry is better? You tell me which color is better, red, green, blue, or black? There may be one right. How can you say that to wish, what is better, to say Sat Sri Akal or Namaskar or other ways of greeting? Which way of greeting is better? Can you say
Depends.
something? So there are many considerations which sorry. I am in a class, so I'll call you. I'll be there by quarter. So the point is that, what as an administrator you are required to understand that there are many possible ways to understand the reality. One is that, let us think of only two. One is positivistic, the other is hermeneutic. And there is a possibility that as an administrator, depends that, what is my perception of reality, and then I take a decision. Obviously, like one has to take a decision. It is not academic. One has to take a decision. But then to think that everywhere in the world, this kind of decision should be taken, that would be too much to expect. Yeah.
And what culture they were from and what they are. But we need to look at the basically from the point of view of around who the decision is taken. The people. For example, the administrator, his own perception of culture does not matter as much as the perception of people for whom he is taking the decision. But in the third approach to be taken, that the truth is one. The perceptions of truth may be many, but in that particular situation, for whom the decision is being taken, that is more important than the researcher's own point of view.
No, like to think that truth is one, like that may be a perception.
For example, you gave the question that what is better, rice or wheat? And we answer from the researcher's perspective. For example, I am from North India. I would say that wheat is better or roti is better. But if we look at a certain situation that somebody has to consume, we need to look at the calories, we need to look at what the content of protein, everything we have to look at. And we look at if somebody has gluten allergy or something. In that perspective, truth would be one. And we can actually calculate it.
Well, good observation, I would say. And then again, I will take you to anthropology of I oversimplify to convey what I want to say. Civilizing the uncivilized. Civilizing the uncivilized is basically, if you go through the British policy towards tribes, then they considered British colonial rule considered jhum cultivation or the shifting cultivation as an example of uncivilized practice. And that is why they thought that it is good for the tribes to do away with jhum cultivation, and they should follow the civilized practice of cultivation that is called so-called scientific way of doing the cultivation as such. And if you go into the history of anthropology, you find that there are many preventive ways to demotivate tribes from practicing jhum cultivation by imposing even fines, 2 annas or 4 annas per hoe. They were charged, and this was a huge amount, and they could not pay, because of they wanted to continue jhum cultivation. Now,
Hello, friends. You know about my communication experience with the tribal people. We had worked for almost 30 years in Uttarakhand through an NGO called ERA. We had funded primary schools, 11 primary schools funded by CRI. We had income generation program for women, and we had these toilets even before Pataki started his program. And subsequently, I've been working with the Bihor in Jharkhand and to an extent with the Kamar in Chhattisgarh. But last year only, we decided that we should have a school of our own for tribals. It's about 12 kilometers from Bhimbetka. We have already purchased 10 acres of land, and we are working on that. But meanwhile, एक छोटा सा काम जो है हमने शुरू किया है. There are 22 villages, neighboring villages of Bheels and Gods. And we want them before we start, because that project will take a lot of time. 10 acres is a big investment, and it requires also big investment for construction of school. Meanwhile, we decided that we should have some additional support to the tribals. So we are starting a program to make people better educated. There are primary schools, but education through sports and through games and through their own languages, and also making them aware about how they can benefit from the tribal from the government. For that, we are launching a project as early as possible, and we want crowdfunding from you people. I want that all of us, we have gained from the society, and all of us should contribute to the society also. So I wish all of us contribute to that project. A small amount is there, total is about 12 lakhs, and I want everyone to contribute. The details are there on the screen. Thank you.
A new trend is evolving, and that is called, organic production, organic cultivation. If I ask, at least to me, I don't see much difference between, they're similar, jhum cultivation and organic cultivation. But the point is that at one point of time, because of the domination of the British Raj, they looked upon this practice of agriculture as uncivilized, unacceptable, unscientific. And that is why the administrators punished the tribes for practicing jhum cultivation by making it illegal. The point is, it is not that right or wrong. It's a question of that now the way they imposed one system, and today we realize that we are going back to the same practice in a different way in the name of organic. If I have a choice today, I pay twice the amount for organic products than the products which use high yielding variety seeds or fertilizer or those chemicals, and because it is harmful to my body as such. So the point is, the scientific method of cultivation is what the Britishers taught us, and the jhum cultivation practiced by Adivasi, Banwasi, whatever they call it, anthropologists are there. So that is bad. That is lack of knowledge. That is because they are uncivilized and will civilize. Who? We the whites, we the administrators, sorry, we will teach them what is right and what is wrong for you as such. So the point is that, what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what is bad from whose point of view? I don't want to make you academic. But as an administrator, you take a decision, no problem. But then when you take a decision, then and don't think that this is history. I mean, it happened. Today, now whatever Elon Musk is doing, you guys are coming from those science background as such. What is that project? Link.
Starlink.
Sorry?
Starlink.
Starlink and the other one? That brain.
Neuralink.
Neuralink is justification for Neuralink or against Neuralink? No, ethical question is that past, the Zoom cultivation should be practiced or should be banned. Now its matter is past and forget it. But let us talk of today, that Neuralink, should it be continued or should it be banned?
So
The point is that what is right and what is wrong is not a only concern for the past. Even in artificial intelligence age, we need to pose this question: what is right and what is wrong, and from whose point of view? So the point is that when we talk of the different ways to understand the reality, it is not only we are talking of the past, what happened during the British Raj and what the Britishers did, right or wrong, regarding the policy of agriculture and how they shape the reality as such. So reality gets regulated and shaped by the dominant ideology, that we cannot forget. And then over some time, when we look at in retrospect, then these philosophical questions become very relevant, and don't think that what I am talking about it is only for yesterday. Even today and even for future in time to come, this is technical quote unquote ethical algorithm is something which is extremely important in the domain of AI as such. So some of the questions which we are discussing now as a methodologist, these are very relevant for within the domain of ethical algorithm in AI. Yes. This is a digression. I'm sorry. Yeah. Then you can use the micro, because others will also listen, and mind it. Every question is important by you. Don't think, and I will quote my students. My students are very fond of saying that students have all the rights to be wrong, which means whatever the questions coming, it is not a question of right or wrong. For seeking clarification, feel free to ask.
Yes, sir. Can we say that reality is influenced by space and time? Like
Maybe,
in the
maybe.
1930s,
Maybe, yes.
again, yeah.
Yes, answer is yes, maybe. I will say maybe. And this is exactly what happened with Einstein, and now whatever in the domain of quantum mechanics is going on. That how they are two diametrically opposed. There is a paradigm shift at, like for 50 years, there was a speed breaker because of the domination of Einsteinian theory. That is the way I understand it. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Offline.
Everything which happened in the universe has pros and cons. Do you believe this or not? Everything happens has a pros and cons. Like the same you told कि agriculture में जो उस टाइम पे पेस्टिसाइड्स या जो भी केमिकल्स का यूज होता था, या तो वो उसकी वजह से फिर वापस से हम ऑर्गेनिक में जा रहे हैं. तो सर उस टाइम पे जो रैपिड इंक्रीज हो रहा था पॉपुलेशन में, क्या आपको जरूरी नहीं लगता कि वो जरूरी था ज्यादा कल्टीवेशन के लिए, ज्यादा ग्रेन्स के लिए, ताकि सबका पेट भरा जाए, वरना वो तो वैसे भी मरते ही सर.
Yeah, that is a good question. Now the problem is that there will be substantial decline in production because of climate change. In India, we'll face this. So the concern of the policy makers is that, how to cope with future generation. By 2050, there will be substantial decline in production because of climate change. and the population will increase. So how to cope with that? So should we go for what kind of agriculture? What should be the policy of the government? The way we handled in 60s and 70s, that the Americans dumped the wheats into ocean, and Morarji Desai was declined. He could not get wheat. So, and then we went for green revolution as such. But then similar situation may appear or reappear. So obviously, whenever we encounter problems, we come out with some solution. That solution may be right, that solution may be wrong. Like when we look back after independence, Mahalanobisian model of development, then something went wrong with Mahalanobisian model of development because the majority of the population lived in rural areas and major resource allocation had been for urban India. And that is why Michael Lipton, in his Why Poor People Stay Poor, argues that this was something wrong in the policy of the government of India after independence, that this should not have been done. Adequate attention should have been paid towards rural India, and more resource allocation was desirable for rural India, but it did not happen. And that is something, so the policymakers did it, administrators did it, but then we have to pay the price for it. So the thing is that it's an unending process. But then to think that something has been done is always right is not true. The way the physicists look at the reality at 400 or 500 years before, today when we look back, no, they should not have thought the way they were thinking, the way they were observing, that they were giving laws. This is unacceptable. So the point is that we keep on progressing, we keep on changing. The way Plato looked at the reality, Aristotle did not agree in spite of being his student. So it happens, that reality, over time and space, that Aristotle disagreed with his Guruji, Plato. So it happened earlier also, it is happening today also, and it may happen in future also. So why we are worried that one reality maybe, no, it doesn't matter. The point is that we should have commitment for what we think is right. That is the point. That if we are for, like, what is the task of the civil servants? Civil servants are normally, by their designation, you are not here to make a policy. You are to execute the policy. So don't question about whether policy is right or policy is wrong. You have been told that, okay, this is what you have to do, just do it. There you have to be faithful of what you are doing it. So your task is that, okay, you have to construct this number of houses. So under PM Awas Yojana, you make 1,000 houses. Now, as an administrator, you are not allowed to think that what will be the impact of emission of carbon and how these houses are going to generate carbon and what should be the policy for the government of India to construct a house which are decarbonized in nature. No, that is an alternative policy as such. No, so you are not there to challenge the policy of the government of India as such. You are there to implement the policy of the government of India as such. So reality to you as an administrator should be, from my point of view, that government has said the reality, and that reality is the policy of the government, and that you can't digress. Okay. In academics, you can keep on arguing, you can challenge it, but as an administrator, you are there to execute the policy as such. That is your responsibility. So the reality is, the truth is that articulated in the form of a policy by government of India, just implement it. implementation is the reality as such. And you have to be honest in implementing that. That is the point. Then, but to think that this is the only reality and nothing else, that will be very narrow parochial understanding of the reality itself. Such. At least one should be critical of it. Okay, so I think I should proceed. No, so I did not discuss about, yeah. Okay, yes, please.
Sir.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
sir. Like few policies may be against each other. Like one policy, one policy may be different from other policy. They could be against each other. In that case, we do need to suggest a proper change for that. In that case, because the politician who will be making that policy, they will not be thinking that this policy is against it. But as a civil servant, we do need to explain it to him or her, right?
Would you repeat it because you are not comprehensible or someone who has because
For example, the Awas Yojana, like the carbon, for example, the housing, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Housing, they may have a target, and again, the Ministry of Environment, they may have a different target. Both the targets are against each other. Like one the 1,000 houses may have, like they may the carbon release would be a lot, and again the sustainability goals of the Ministry of Environment is against those the saying. They have made sure that everything right.
So I think that your question is that there are disagreements or the outcome will be contrary to two ministries as such. Then in that case, depends that from which ministry in which ministry you are working. Because mind it that bureaucrats, everyone has his or her own limitation, and one has to work within those limitations as such. Mind it, bureaucrats may be very creative also. And one of the best examples of creativity, and some of you come from science background, even IIT Kharagpur alumnus of, in the civil services, someone who was instrumental in making Aadhaar. Very interesting story about how he ended up with Aadhaar as a concept, if you read the story of that civil servant, of course, it was a teamwork. So how right now you are opting for civil, anthropology as your subject, but then some of you may come from BTech or MTech or some other background as such. And in the case of making of Aadhaar by, that civil servant's name, I'm forgetting, I've read the book, very interesting and powerful, that how the background of that IITN helped in using information technology for digital governance as such, very powerful as such. So the point is that if you are creative, if you are knowledgeable in your branch of knowledge, and then you become a civil servant, so some of you can contribute as a civil servant. But that is a different thing. My limitation today is I am simply trying to share with you that what is reality and how to understand that reality. And my main argument is that methodological methodology can help us in looking at deciphering those realities as such, and there may be layers. And depending upon, how you look at it, and these are some of the ways that we can follow a positivistic approach, we can follow the hermeneutic approach. Depends that how we want to look at the reality as such. So there are many possible ways to arrive at, understanding the truth. And we do it, but then eventually whatever is truth, that prevails. Okay, so that is the main point. So let me proceed with your permission that I does it make sense? You know, did I respond to your query properly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Because you know, like it's always good to be reciprocal, and so if yeah,
Sir, am I audible?
yeah, you are audible.
Sir, coming back to, I actually had a doubt. Coming back to inductive and deductive studies, sir, you told that we don't require a hypothesis in inductive and we require a hypothesis in deductive. Am I right? Sir, but
Yes.
to come up with an hypothesis in deductive studies, don't we require inductive studies? Like, can we say that inductive studies are prerequisite for a deductive study? Can we like put it that way?
Very good question. Your answer lies here. If you look at this figure, then how we start in inductive logic of inquiry and how we start in deductive logic of inquiry. Now, what happens that in inductive logic of inquiry, we start with observations. Then we make generalization. Then we theorize. And then we can formulate a hypothesis. We start here and then complete the circle here. Whereas in deductive logic of inquiry, we start here. And when we start here, this is implying here. And then from here, we test with observation. So it is a cycle, but then what is your starting point? In inductive logic of inquiry, we start with observation. And then the circle is completed. Whereas in deductive logic of inquiry, we start here and then we complete the circle. Does it answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Good question, you know, because please feel free whenever you mind it. Your question is always right. Don't think you are wrong. I may be able to answer, I may not be able to answer. I may be able to satisfy your question, I may not be able to satisfy all your questions. But asking a question is important. You are having some doubts, I will try, but not always I will be able to satisfy your curiosity as such. Because you are more inquisitive than mine. And so now, if you look at deductive logic of inquiry, I hope I did not complete it. So here, actually, you look at these steps, and then you go back to the question asked by just now, the participant asked. You see that, in deductive logic of inquiry, these are self-explanatory steps, one by one. If you read, then these are self-explanatory. That first thing first is that, can anybody read it? And I want you to read for participation's sake. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, number one, online, offline doesn't matter now. I should not be biased towards online or offline. Anyone please read it.
According to Karl Popper, the deductive logic of inquiry has a number of essential following steps. First, begin by putting forward a tentative idea, a conjecture, a hypothesis, or a set of hypotheses that form a theory.
This is the step one. This is step number one. And step number one is that you start with a hypothesis. Now you read in the book, hypothesis is a tentative generalization, the validity of which remains to be tested. So that is fine, no problem, that is self-explanatory. But in deductive logic of inquiry, that is how you start. In inductive logic of inquiry, you do not start your research with a hypothesis. Whereas in deductive logic of inquiry, you start with a hypothesis. So it's very different than each other. So in both, we try to explain what, how, and why, but it differs depending upon which logic of inquiry we are pursuing. If you pursue inductive, one way to do it. If you pursue deductive, another way of doing it. So this is step number 1. Step number 2, anyone, any volunteer, please? Online, offline, doesn't make difference.
Deduced a conclusion or a number of conclusions with the help of previously accepted hypotheses.
So that we do, that we arrive at some conclusion on the basis of hypothesis. And if you come from a statistics background, then we have a null hypothesis, we have an alternative hypothesis, and with some parametric or non-parametric tests, we validate it and we accept or reject the hypothesis on by rigorously applying some statistical measures. That's fine, not a problem. So that is what is implying in step number 2. Then step number 3. Any volunteer, please? Anyone?
Examine the conclusions and the logic of the argument that produced them. Compare this argument with existing theories to see if it constitutes an advance in our understanding. If one is satisfied with this examination, then
so this is what is that, how it is adding to the knowledge. Machines can learn, machines cannot learn. So digital intelligence versus human intelligence. Someone having done masters in psychology gets Nobel Prize in physics, Hinton. And I'm proud of being alumnus of the same university. So the point is that, like, if you can think that hypothesis is that the deep learning or digital intelligence cannot be equal to human intelligence. Or in other words, ChatGPT will never ever compete with the human intelligence. Now, this may be a hypothesis which may be accepted or which may be rejected on the basis of data available to the researchers. Or, that for development, if you want to do, then how the introduction of pesticides and HYV, high yield variety seeds, and then fertilizers, assured irrigation will enhance the production, will increase the production to cope with the population, growing population. That, if the growth of population is more than 2% after independence, then the proportionate increase in production of crops is also desirable, and it has to meet the increased population and such. So in hypothesis, we test those things, and then we see that how it is helpful in enhancing our knowledge about certain things and such, which may be related to our mundane everyday life. Agriculture is one. Or now there is something called digital revolution. So conventional way of reaching the unreached by sharing the knowledge system of agriculture by village level workers, by extension services, through human being, how this technology, information technology, how digital resources called cyber extensions could be helpful and instrumental in increasing the agricultural output and production, because 65% of the population still lives in rural India. So if that kind of hypothesis we want to examine, we can do so. So the point is that whatever we do it, we also see that how it is adding to our knowledge system as such. That is the point. Then next one. Next point, please.
Test the conclusion by gathering appropriate data, make the necessary observation, or conduct the necessary experiments.
Yeah, so whatever depends that in which subject area we are doing research. And then what is the scientific way of testing the hypothesis whether it is valid or invalid. It cannot be arbitrary. Science is systematization, repetition, that it can be tested and retested by someone else. So that is what is the meaning, that we keep on repeating it until we arrive at some conclusion. And the assumption is that eventually the truth will prevail and false will disappear. It will become redundant, will, like do away with the false, and only the truth will prevail. And that is why we keep on testing and retesting for its validation as such. That is the next point, number 5, if you can. Yeah, please read it. Same point which I said just now. Yeah.
If the test fails, that is, if the data are not consistent with the conclusion, the theory must be false. If the original conjecture does not match the data, it must be rejected.
Rejected. Acceptance and rejection of null hypothesis with some parametric or non-parametric statistical measures, we accept or reject. Acceptance or rejection will depend upon, satisfying of certain criteria, which is a very rigorous exercise in itself. But that is what we do it in deductive logic of inquiry. That there are certain ways in understanding the reality, the truth, by these ways, Okay, and the last point? Last point, if the conclusion. Yeah,
If the
please go ahead.
conclusion is the test, that is, the data are consistent with it, the theory is temporarily supported. It is corroborated but not proven to be true.
Yeah. So, acceptance, rejection, modification, these are some of the probabilities of the hypothesis. We can accept it as it is, we can reject it, or we can modify it. These are 3 possibilities of a hypothesis. So if we pursue deductive logic of inquiry to understand the truth, to understand the reality, then this is how we proceed for deductive logic of inquiry. Then, no, I will skip this other parts as such. This one we have done it. And then I will skip many of these things. Or this is, I will skip. This is basically if you want to analyze a class in agricultural society. So this is Utsa Patnaik's E-criterion model. This model is helpful in understanding identification of agrarian classes. It will take lots of time, so I will skip it. I'm looking for some table which I will find it, then I will stop it. Yeah, here it is. Again, another Eureka. Yeah. This is where I will mind it that you are more energetic than me. So I feel tired. You may not feel tired. So this will be probably the last PPT, where I will try to summarize. I started with the question that as a researcher, we are concerned with what, how, and why questions. We try to understand what is caste, how caste, why caste. We try to understand what is ethnicity, why ethnicity, how ethnicity. We try to understand race, what is race, why race, how race relations, and so on and so forth, depending upon which society we are interested in. So, here, and let us confine to inductive and deductive, because retroductive and abductive, let us not, because that would have taken a long time. And I, knowingly, I skipped it. So, sometimes a particular type of logic of inquiry is appropriate. So say, for example, if we are exploring the purpose of research is to explore as a district magistrate, what is your task is that find out that, how the people are responding to new technology, that is ICT. Whether the people are accepting it or they are not very fond of using this technology. So you are exploring. And in case of exploration, inductive logic of inquiry is appropriate. And abductive, we did not discuss later. So if in research, what is the response of IT for digital governance? That people want to take their caste certificate. People want Aadhaar. People want to know about scholarships available for their children in a remote village. So if we have CSC at the panchayat level in India, then the administrator's task is just to find out that, are they accepting it? Do they go for it? Otherwise, huge amount to be allocated for digital services. So if it is exploratory in nature and digital governance is an area which is relatively new, governance could be through traditional way, the way it has been going on, the bureaucracy, the way it has worked, and governance maybe through digital resources. So if you have, I said that digital immigrants and digital natives. And what is the difference? This side and that other side. So other side is digital natives and this side is digital immigrants. We are immigrants. I am a digital immigrant and the other side is digital native. So how digital natives respond to some of the digital resources for digital governance, for getting caste certificate, for getting Aadhaar, for getting basic information about scholarships and so on and so forth. So if it is exploratory in nature, then the inductive logic of inquiry will be appropriate, not deductive or retroductive. Or abductive. Now, I don't want to go into abductive because that will unnecessarily take more time, but inductive. Then if it is descriptive, then inductive again would be appropriate. So this table is showing that for exploration, inductive, for description, measure activity will be inductive. But if you need an explanation, then deductive logic of inquiry or deductive research strategy will be appropriate. Similarly, for prediction, you want to predict that, prediction that, if we have introduced digital resources for digital governance, then will the total number of users in CSC will substantially increase or will not increase? Government is interested in doing it. In that case, so the purpose is to predict or provide an explanation, then deductive logic of inquiry will be appropriate. So in this table, what kind of research questions do we have? What, how, and why which we started. And depending upon the kind of questions we have as a researcher, as an administrator, and then what are the objectives of our research? Objective is exploration, objective is description, objective is providing explanation or prediction or change. We decide appropriate research strategy as such. So the point is to recapitulate what I had said, that research methodology is basically to understand the reality. Reality may be understood by posing a question: what, how, and why. This is basically through A, techniques of data collection, B, uh, statistical tools, and C, philosophy as such. Without these three components, now A and B I did not discuss because when we talk of A, then what is observation as a technique of data collection? What is case study? What is interview? What is scale as a measurement of attitude? There are different scales, and so on and so forth. These are some of the things which we discuss at a greater length in component A, that is techniques of data collection. In component B, we discuss different statistics, measures of central tendency, arithmetic mean, median, mode, then measures of variability, mean deviation, standard deviation, and so on and so forth, geometric mean, harmonic mean, and so on and so forth. Then it could be correlation, Pearsonian correlation coefficient, Spearman's correlation coefficient, then chi-square test, regression, one-step, two-step least square method, and so on and so on, and many covariance. These are some of the statistical measures to analyze data. So this is component B. And C is philosophy. So methodology is a complex combination of A plus B plus C. It is something like when we say biryani. So biryani is a complex combination, vegetable biryani. So you have rice, then you have ghee, then you have spices, and then you have different vegetables, and you put it in a particular way, and then you cook it, and then it becomes a biryani. It is not simply put together and heat it up. No. So sorry. No, so biryani is a complex process of different ingredients you put together, and then like how you cook it, again the culture will come in the picture, that which part of the world you come from and how you prepare it. So similarly, for researcher, when you put what, how, and why questions, that A, B, and C, these are different components, like different ingredients, and then how you put all these things together. It cannot be in a mechanical way. The point is that you put rice, you put all the vegetables, and you put all the spices, and put it and heat it up. Will it become a biryani? There are certain, those who know how to cook, they understand it. Similarly, it is not just A, B, and C, mechanically you put it and eureka, you have got the answer of what, how, and why question. No. It's a very complex blending of A, B, and C, which requires expertise. So the point to remember is that there are different techniques of data collection. That is component A, different techniques of data collection. B, analytical tools, that there are many analytical tools. That is component B. And C, philosophy, at least we have talked about ontology and epistemology, and also logic of inquiry, at least inductive and deductive we have talked about, and then also abductive and retroductive. There are two which I did not discuss because that would have been too many things together. But for the sake of convenience, retroductive is something closer. It is not, but something closer to deductive, and abductive is something closer to inductive. So this is what, in a nutshell, is research methodology. So when you read about ethnography, when you read about village study of M.N. Srinivas, then no, like the best example is that you read M.N. Srinivas village study, Rampura, and you read this, that French anthropologist, Louis Dumont Homo hierarchicus. Now, both M.N. Srinivas and Louis Dumont both are trying to understand caste system in India. But then when you go through, M.N. Srinivas study, and when you read Louis Dumont, you find that both are talking about caste, but the way they talk about caste is so different from each other. And that is basically because of differences in their basic assumptions and methodology as such. And unless, as a student, having clarity on methodology, which I have described just now, I don't think that you will be able to understand why M.N. Srinivas' caste study is so different than Louis Dumont's Homo hierarchicus. In order to understand, a good grasp of methodology is important as such. And mind it, don't consider that social science or anthropology is, very different than science. Perhaps if you have deeper understanding of science, including physics and perhaps mathematics, I don't know much about mathematics, but we find that even in physics, we see that how there is a paradigm shift and how things which is true today is untrue tomorrow, or which was true yesterday is untrue today. It has happened in physics, it has happened in the history of science, and it is also true for social science as such. Science is basically something is true today, which may become false tomorrow. We don't know. We keep on questioning it, and that's how the dialectics of knowledge progresses as such. So I will stop, and then maybe in terms of question answer, perhaps if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Very important question maybe there from your example point of view, Dumont versus Srinivas. Dumont lived more than 10 years in a Brahmin family in South India. So he learned that hierarchy the way it is taught. And of course, Srinivas is the original thinker. And this issue was once raised in terms of Weber, whether caste is a hierarchical order or it's a segmentary system of society. That will be the same. And I wish that you prepare also. Really enlightening, I think you should say. In terms of cultural relativity, I'll suggest you one thing. It's a very small book by Swami Vivekananda, Oriental versus Occidental. How East and West, they think about same situations and how they respond differently. कितने 80-90-100 पेज की किताब होगी शायद, पर बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है. मैंने तो 50 साल पहले पढ़ी थी, भूल भी गया हूँ बहुत कुछ. जैसे व्हेन यू जो भी छींक आती है जब, वेस्ट में बोलते हैं सॉरी, हमारे यहाँ बोलते हैं शतम जीवी, जिसने याद किया है वो 100 साल तक जिंदा रहे. वहां जो है अगर टेबल पे खाना खाने बैठे और आपकी नाक बह जाए तो दे कॉल इट इज लकी. हमारे यहाँ उठा के बाहर फेंक देते हैं बंदे का. ये छोटे छोटे ट्रीटमेंट्स होते हैं ना, ये एग्जाम के एंगल से बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाते हैं. और मेरे को तो एक तरह से इनलाइटन किया है प्रोफेसर ने. रियली जेम ऑफ अ पर्सन आई वुड से. एंड आई विश, क्योंकि अलीगढ़ तो ये है स्टोन थ्रो डिस्टेंस, तो कोशिश करेंगे कि हंसियो बगल में तो है ही, ऐसे ही कहते हैं. एंड इट डिपेंड्स ऑन रिलेटिविटी. आप लंदन से कंपेयर करोगे तो स्टोन थ्रो ही हो ना, तो इसलिए ऐसा कुछ करेंगे शायद कि वो मंथली जो है एक लेक्चर रिसर्च मेथड पे या थिंकर्स पे. और बाकी जो, लेकिन आप प्रेफरेंस आप लोगों की होनी चाहिए, प्रायोरिटी आप लोगों की होनी चाहिए. यू मेक ए कंसेंसस अबाउट थिंकर्स और रिसर्च मेथड्स के बारे. अरे विच इशू और थिंकर्स वो मतलब एक इवोल्यूशनिज्म पे एक हफ्ता लगा देना, ठीक है ना। अगर मेरी चॉइस पूछोगे तो आई रिलाई ऑन पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म एंड इंटरप्रेटेटिव थियरीज एंड स्ट्रक्चरलिज्म। मुझे नहीं लगता ऐसे, नहीं 3 ज्यादा से ज्यादा हो सकते हैं, इसका तो कुछ भी नहीं होगा, लेकिन इट हैज टू बी कंसेंसस, हैज टू बी, है ना। तो ही हैज टू लीव फॉर, मतलब आना ही बड़ी बात थी, बाई चांस हो गया, पर अब बाई चांस नहीं होगा, ठीक है। सो ये जो 3 इश्यूज मैंने बताए हैं, ये तो आराम से जो है, अब ही कैन डू एनी टाइम ही लाइक्स, ठीक है। तो सर को मेरा ख्याल है कि थैंक्स किया जाए, और नहीं पूछे इस बार बात होगी, ठीक है। आप लोगों को फोटो खींचना तो
नहीं पूछ ऑनलाइन।
गॉड ब्लेस यू बेटे। सर अगर फोटो खींचना तो थैंक यू बोल रहे हैं आपको।
थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक्स फॉर योर पेशेंट लिसनिंग।
मैं कभी भी 2 घंटे लेक्चर में कभी नहीं बैठा, मैं आधे घंटे में मैं वॉकआउट कर जाता हूँ, पहली बार मैं 2 घंटे बैठा हूँ।
I will share my experience as a student. In India, I used to have 3 hours class in Delhi School of Economics. Andre Bete MN Srinivas student. And मैं सोचता था कि ये 3 घंटा इतनी जल्दी कैसे खत्म हो गया. But then I had another teacher at the international level. And वहां भी 3 घंटे का क्लास था, लेकिन वो 4.5-5 घंटे में से पहले खत्म नहीं होता था, और 5-5.5 घंटे के बाद कहते थे, oh sorry guys, I have to go somewhere, so see you next week. हफ्ता में एक ही क्लास होता था, बट 3 घंटे का क्लास कभी भी पूरे सेमेस्टर में 3 घंटे में कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ. तो like I'm used to and without PPT, mind it.
विनय का भी यही हाल था।
हाँ,
What प्रोफेसर विनय would do, क्लास में आएंगे, घड़ी पहनी होती थी, इसको उतारना, टेबल पे रखना, एंड ही विल स्टार्ट एंड ही नेवर लुक एट द वॉच। स्टूडेंट्स को कहना पड़ता था।
And we're classmates. Professor Vinay Srivastava and me were the first batch of MPhil in the Department of Sociology, Delhi School of Economics. So he was my classmate. We miss him a lot. Yeah. तो पता नहीं होगा बहुत सारे लोगों को.
हाँ. And last time when we met, he was in Gower Hall. बजा रहे थे और वो पाउच लिया दूध का, 3 किस्तों में पी रहा था। और बुल वर्कर.
Yes. No, actually, I have interest in music and also in Indian classical music, jazz, Western classical music. And then the complement is that, I had interest in theory of music, theorization. So I did not learn by anyone piano, but then I learned myself, self-taught. And then I composed something. And then once my Chinese, there was a hostel where I was staying, and 300 students, 150 boys and 150 girls, together we were living. So one student, Chinese, came to me and said that, please give me that cassette in which you have composed your own recording. I gave him. After 10-15 days, he returned. I said, what is so special? Why did you want? So he was doing MSc in physics. He said, I was undergoing lots of tension and your music helped me to relieve tension. So that was a great compliment I ever had of my composition in music, and that is basically because of my interest in theory, theory of music, of course. Like. हाँ, ठीक है. Thank you for your
खींचना है तो खींच सकते हो, बाद में मत जाना, ठीक है.
Thank you.
Yeah.